Broham. Broskis.
Brosif!
You already know what today is. It's Tier List Tuesday. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day, wow, phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Today for Tier List Tuesday, I'm going to be ranking some of the most powerful budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! All of these decks will be built with a budget in mind of about $100, and I'm going to be ranking on what I think are going to be the best budget decks going forward, all the way to you might want to pay the bills instead. Now, all of the strategies on this particular tier list are going to be determined not only by decks that have actually topped over the past few weeks, we're actually going to be using some of the strategies that you guys posted down below in the comment section. So if you think that I missed a particular strategy, then go ahead and let me know. I'll try to include it on the next list. And just as usual, I have 5 different categories here: top budget, next budget, it takes a really good pilot, could be better, and just pay the bills instead. One thing that I want to say about this particular tier list is that as long as you're not in just pay the bills instead, I think every single one of these budget decks can be really good. It's just the higher you are, it's the easier for this deck to be able to accomplish things, and the lower you are, it's the harder it is. I wouldn't say that one budget deck is better than the other, it's just the ease of being able to compete against some of the other decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. Also, I have a special announcement to make. I have a new YouTube channel! My guys, if you want more casual content, make sure to follow your boy on TheCaliEffect. It is going to be phenomenal. So the criteria for this budget tier list is that every single one of these budget decks have to be built in about $100, and I'm going to be ranking them against some of the top decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! How will they be able to fare against the tier 1 matchup, as well as being able to play through popular cards like Cosmic Cyclone and Harpy's Feather Duster, as well as the Bystials and the rise of hand traps. Let's go ahead and jump on into this tier list, as I'm gonna go ahead and start off with Dino. Unfortunately, Dino does struggle a bit. Oh, what do I mean a bit? It struggles quite a bit against some of the top contenders in this format. I'm gonna put it in the could be better. I think that Miscellaneous Ceres to 1 is the root of the Dino's problems. Once we get that, it becomes a way better board breaking deck, as it does have protection from a lot of the cards like Perlino, which is very problematic against the deck, and it also allows the Dino strategy to be able to play through the later turns, because it will have a free summon from the deck. But right now, I'm gonna say it's in the could be better, because Dino's kind of struggling right now. Still one of my favorite decks though. Ancient Warrior is actually a strategy that you guys requested on yesterday's video, so if you guys didn't see the top budget decks for under $50, go ahead and check that out. Ancient Warriors is actually a really good under $50 budget deck, and after doing my playtesting and researching, my conclusion is that it's going to take a really good pilot. I absolutely love this deck's matchup against strategies like Tearlament and Sprite, because it has all of the correct disruptions. It allows you to bounce those extra deck monsters back into the deck instead of being sent to the graveyard, where Sprite and Tearlament players can reuse them, but more importantly, it can actually banish cards in the graveyard. It is an excellent going first and a going second deck. My problem with the Ancient Warrior strategy is that with the rise of hand traps, being able to disrupt the level 4 Ancient Warrior, I can't think of its name right now, that is pretty problematic for the deck. It's going to take a great pilot to be able to overcome those type of obstacles to be able to play it effectively. Black Wings actually have been topping throughout this format, and it's a fairly good next budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. My favorite thing about Black Wings is being able to go into so many different Exceeds and Synchros. I don't think players understand quite yet on how powerful Black Wings can be, as making Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend is still very powerful, but it's basically the floor. Being able to summon DD King Kali Yuga, which prevents the opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In a sense, is the deck ceiling, and Black Wings are really powerful in that regard of being able to mix and match their extra deck cards and summon some really powerful monsters. Crystal Beast is still going to be a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. For about $30 to $45, you're gonna get a top competing deck that can search a really powerful card like Necro Valley to be able to shut the opponent down. Now, in case you were wondering about the back row destruction being pretty powerful against Crystal Beast, not gonna cap, it's pretty good, but what Crystal Beast has going for it is the ability to keep on playing and getting resources back, allowing them to stay into the game. Cyber Dragon is, oh man, it actually did top an event if I think so. I'm pretty sure it did, but I'm still gonna put it in just pay the bills instead, and it's for one huge reason. I think that Cyber Dragon as a pure deck will struggle, mainly because there isn't a lot of strategies that like to sit a monster comfortably into the extra monster zone. When they do, it's a monster that they really don't care about losing a lot of times. Being able to Cyber Dragon into a Sprite Elf is okay, you got rid of the Elf, but the Elf can still special summon monsters to the side of the field. As a Cyber Dragon Sprite version, I've been seeing that pop up a lot, and that is actually effective strategy, but the problem with that is that you're probably better off just playing Sprite instead, especially if you already have Sprite Blues, which could potentially put you off of your budget. Moving forward, Ignister. Oh man, these cyber strategies are back, baby! Hand traps are extremely good right now, and if I had to give you a list of hand traps that I think are the most powerful in order, it'd probably go like Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, Skullmeister, Nibiru, which is crazy because players don't respect it, and then maybe Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. As you guys know, when cyber strategies get their hand traps back, they become extremely powerful. Unfortunately for Ignister, I'm going to put it in the could be better still, and that's because their Link monster Arrival at Ignister isn't as powerful as it once was. Tier limit strategies can summon monsters over 3,000 attack with ease, putting Arrival at risk. And while I do understand that players can summon Rival a lot stronger, sometimes even 5,000 attack, what players have been using a lot is Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, which puts this deck back at risk again. I don't think it's a bad strategy. It's probably the best could be better strategy that I'm probably going to put on this list, but I do think that there are better cyber strategies that you can pick from. Dark World is easily going to be a next budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I think this deck's biggest allure right now is being able to summon the Big Daddy Grapha Fusion monster. And while this deck has not succeeded at the highest level as I would expect, it's still topping a lot here and there. This fusion monster is completely ridiculous because it feels better than cards that say negate the activation and destroy it, because that typically means that your opponent will be able to trigger a lot of effects. With Big Daddy Grapha, nah. It becomes you discard one card, which only fuels the Dark World strategy to get so many more powerful effects. I think that Dark Worlds are an amazing Yu-Gi-Oh decks that if you guys are starting and getting into the game and you wanted to get into Dark Worlds because you love GX, you're probably in the best spot that you've ever been. Now, we've talked about Fur Hires in yesterday's video, a budget under 50. I still think that Fur Hires is a great deck, but I'm going to put it in takes a really good pilot. The reason why I put Fur Hire in takes a really good pilot is because while it is a deck that can draw a ton of disruptive cards, maybe hand traps, even Bystials, because your budget could be that big enough to fit them, the problem with this is that with the rise of hand traps, being able to stop that first Fur Hire is this deck's weakness, and I think that that will carry over into the format regardless. If you guys are well versed in Fur Hires for some reason, I'm not here to check your, search history or anything, but I know exactly what you're watching, then this is a deck that will take a good pilot, and a good pilot can take it places just like in the regional that it topped. Heroes, my guys. It is your time to shine. Heroes, I feel, could possibly even go for the next top budget. I'm going to play it a little bit safe because I think that they are the next budget deck. It feels really weird to talk about Heroes in budget because just about a year ago, this deck was like $80 million bajillion to be a more struggling deck than it is now. And I'm not saying that Heroes are struggling because against the tier limit matchup, being able to summon Master Hero Dark Claw is so good, tier limit players have been teching match change to summon it against each other. And being able to blow out the Flundereese player or a back row heavy player with Master Hero Acid and Absolute Zero, that is amazing. Heroes have all of the versatility right now and are a very good budget deck. A lot of them have actually been topping some events, so it's pretty cool to hear that Heroes are still on the road and they're still doing really well. Exo Stepsisters, guys. I can't wait for like Exo Sister Dryer to come out because that's going to be easily the best card, right? But I would put the Stepsisters in a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. This is a little bit different than the Crystal Beast strategy because while it can rely on cards like Zombie World and Necro Valley, which are susceptible to destruction, the great thing about this deck is that it has its own engine that's a little bit more consistent than Crystal Beast. And what I mean by that is that it actually has extra deck cards that are dedicated to Exo Sister. This deck can easily OTK with ease, and the monsters actually allow you to be able to gain momentum and be able to disrupt the opponent easily. Exo Sister is a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and it's actually kind of weird as this deck has had some of the most tops throughout the format and is still fairly cheap. Fluinderice is probably your best bet if you guys are a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh player that is going to try hard and doesn't expect to have any friends anytime soon. The normal summon Robina is probably going to be your only friend. Out of all of the decks on this budget tier list, this is probably the best route that you can take, as this deck has been a proven contender over the year and of course still has Barrier Statue in the TCG as opposed to the Master Duel. Now personally, I would love to see the Barrier Statue banned, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen anytime soon for the TCG. Moving forward, Goatee is another one of those strategies I got to test out because of you guys' request. I think Goatee 100% takes a really good pilot. Now, it could be because I'm just completely trash with the deck. It could be that. It could be. But I have seen the same thing as Goatee as I've seen with Ancient Warrior and Furhire. Once your main play gets disrupted, it could be a lot harder for you to get back into the game. And the biggest draw for Goatee right now, in my opinion, is that players don't know what the deck does, but a player that does know what the deck does evens the playing field a lot more, meaning that you're going to have to go into your big bag and pull out the big brain strategies that I'm probably not smart enough to understand just yet. Earth Machine. I love Earth Machine, guys. Let's just put it this way. I have never, ever in my life hated Earth Machine, but I am a realist. I think Earth Machine is going to take a really, probably even in the could be better. I think it's closer to the could be better than a really good pilot. The reason why is because Earth Machine has been a deck that's been reliant on some of those cards like Rivalry of the Warlords, Floodgate Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And the good thing is that Floodgate Yu-Gi-Oh cards are great right now. Rivalry of the Warlords is amazing. The bad thing is that we have seen an uptick in back row removal, Cosmic Cyclone and Harpy's Feather Duster, and that could be a pretty big problem for Earth Machine. Another big problem with Earth Machine is that the extra deck isn't as, well, the extra deck is restrictive as opposed to some of these other decks' extra decks. Being able to play cards like Access Code Talker, the Nightmares, Asa, those are cards that you could try inside of Earth Machine, but since a lot of times you get restricted to only being able to summon machines, not always possible to be able to do. I think with its extra deck restrictions and the Floodgate cards not being as amazing, takes a really good pilot. Hand traps might be the better way to go. Now I'm going to make a bold take with Marine Cess, a hugely bold take. Keep in mind, guys, hand traps are amazing. This deck doesn't necessarily need its back row, so a lot of times players will side out their back row removal against it, meaning that you can side in cards like Rivalry of the Warlords. I think that Marine Cess is a next budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. The deck is still ridiculously cheap, and I just mentioned 5 hand traps that you could be playing inside of your deck, meaning that you can play 15 hand traps plus your searchable infinite impermanence, which is really good right now. Another thing that I love about Marine Cess is that it has the best board breaker in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. You can summon World Sea Dragon Zelantis to your side of the field by sacrificing a Link 4, and since you're normally locked into waters with the Marine Cess strategy, you won't be summoning your opponent's monsters back that you're banishing. Marine Cess is actually a lot better than what people are giving it credit, especially since hand traps are on the rise. I would say it's a really good budget deck. Mass Mech has almost all of the properties as Marine Cess, but unfortunately, I can't get over that Math Mech are light monsters. Unfortunately, there are a ton of Bestials in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and that can really mess a Math Mech player over. I think that it's not a bad deck, probably still in the next budget because Bestials could be used to your benefit, but at the same time, I don't see a reason not to play the Marine Cess strategy over Math Mech because Marine Cess not only has a searchable hand trap, it can still play all of those hand traps as well as those Floodgate cards that Math Mech will want to play. Make no mistake though, Math Mech is still extremely good and can often be paired with the Ignister strategy. If you combine these two decks together, they're still a fairly formidable deck. Moving on for Notoria, we talked about this in yesterday's video too, so I'm going to kind of glance over it. If you want to hear more about Notoria, go ahead and check out yesterday's video. Easily top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. This is probably the best deck in this entire tier list to be able to counter a Shizu tier limit, hands down, because the deck has two win conditions. One is to bash your opponent's life points to 0, just like almost any other deck. But if you're going against the tier limit strategy that likes to mill a lot through the Shizu cards, since a lot of Notoria players play Runic, which is 100% affordable, seeing that the Notoria cards are extremely cheap, you can actually use the Runic cards to deck out your opponent. So a lot of times an Shizu tier limit player will mill up to 20 cards from their deck. That's going to make it easy pickings for you to just deck out the rest of them and get a free win. Draco Slayers, hands down, top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I hate that back row removal is into the format, especially Cosmic Cyclone being able to get rid of your Pendulum Scales. But since the deck is just so combo-centric, combo-tastic, it can make those disruptions to prevent your opponent from stopping you and put protections on Necro Valley, which can be huge. Draco Slayer is also a deck that is really versatile, being able to play a Goliath lock or maybe a combo build or anything in between. This is one of the top contenders in Yu-Gi-Oh as a budget deck. Now, Rika is actually a really good deck, especially since it has so much room for hand traps and disruptive cards. I'm going to easily put it in the next budget deck. Ironically, I think the only expensive card for Rika is Rika Glamour right now. Everything else is settled down to be pretty cheap. And what I love about Rika is one card consistent combos that oftentimes you can chain block with your cards that you got from Power of the Elements in Rika Princess. On top of that, being able to tribute your opponent's monsters to disrupt their own board is phenomenal. Rika is easily one of the better decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, better budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, and you should consider playing it if you're a plant lover. Runic, guys. Runic is Runic is probably the necessary evil that we needed outside of Mystic Mine. It's a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It does cost you a little bit more because players have figured out that Runic is good and have been buying out Runic Tip. But Runic is extremely good, especially against tier limit, as for the same reason they send the top up to 20 cards from the deck to the graveyard, and all you got to do is deal with 15 more and you're in a win here. Runic is also really good against a lot of other strategies because of its stall capabilities. So against some of the other strategies, it might take a little bit longer, but since you can buy so much time, you can always just deck your other opponent out, which I think is a bullshit way to win. But at this point in time, if you take away the tier limit of Shizu players, I ain't really even gonna be mad at you. Runic is also another reason why back row removal cards are so prevalent. Being able to stop Runic Fountain is your best bet. Now, moving on to Solomon Greats, the problem with this is that this is ultra reliant on the back row and unfortunately doesn't have many protections like Runic does, or maybe doesn't have a way to follow up like the Draco Slayer does. I'm going to put it in the could be better, still gaining the benefits from the same benefits that Marine Cess and the Mass Mech deck as well as the Ignister deck has, but unfortunately this deck's soul power is in its back row. Really unfortunate to see some of my favorite decks struggle busting right now, doing real bad. Fortunately enough though, another one of my new favorite decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Put some respect on this deck's name, Scareclaw. Scareclaw is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Hands down. Now, I did make a deck profile for this strategy last week, so go ahead and check that out. But if you guys want to play a budget version, fortunately enough, all of the Scareclaw monsters are extraordinarily cheap, meaning that you can go with a Bestial version of Scareclaw, which actually allows you to get two purposes. It serves as a disruption for the opponent that's Light and Dark Reliant, also stops your opponent from Bestialing you, so I guess it's three purposes now, and then can summon Bestial monsters to your side of the field as extenders, which is extremely good. I personally think that Scareclaw is one of those hard-hitting Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks that a lot of players put a lot of respect on. It is easily one of the better budget decks in the game. Sky Strikers, unfortunately, we're doing bad here. We're not doing well. I would probably put it in Pay the Bills instead, but fortunately enough, you don't need a lot of expensive cards for Striker to make it really good or good enough. I'm just going to put it in could be better. The new Sky Striker linkage card actually does a lot for Sky Striker. Unfortunately, it doesn't do enough. I feel personally if we get Sky Striker, Mobilize, Engage, add more than one, possibly even 3 now, because I don't see a lot of decks being able to successfully play it, this deck could actually be in the next budget or takes a really good pilot, but only time will tell. Sword Soul is easily one of the best going second decks in the entire game, and thanks to Magnificent Mavens, just like Sky Striker, this deck is abundantly cheap. I absolutely love Sword Soul as a going second OTK deck. As a going first deck, not really, Doc. Not really. It's okay. It's okay. But I really do love this deck as going second, and the Bestial monsters actually help because they allow you, when your monster get disrupted, to summon themselves to the side of the field and be used for a synchro summon. Thunder Dragon is actually a very, very fun deck to play, and the Bestials were everything that the deck needs. Typically, Chaos cards would need to either banish light monsters or dark monsters or light and dark monsters, but the Bestial monsters do not care, meaning that your Thunder Dragon monsters being light or dark and having the perfect ratios, that doesn't mean anything. With that being said, I'm gonna put it in the next budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I think that this deck is actually insane. You do need the correct pilot to be able to play it, but it's not so much of a correct pilot playing against a bad situation. It's more so of a correct pilot understanding how Thunder Dragon works and being able to play ahead. I think that this deck is really good, especially because it doesn't need back row, and the Bestial monsters will carry you in a lot of the matchups. Being able to summon big monsters is something that Sprite has always feared, and it can link summon or prevent your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh with Archnemesis Ciscados, which is also extremely good. Tri-Brigade has fallen on hard times, and the reason why I say that, I'm gonna put it in could be better, is because the Tri-Brigade Scareclaw version, I'm not a believer in it. I think that Scareclaw Pure or Scareclaw Adventure or Scareclaw Bestial is just way better. Same thing with Tri-Brigade Sprite. Sprite is just better. Just play Sprite at that point in time. The Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc version, I don't think any have topped, which is crazy, seeing that you got so much support from the Forbidden List, and you would think it would be the right situation. But I would definitely put this further down to could be better, is because hand traps are starting to be on the rise, namely being monster effect negators, which just so happen to be really good against Tri-Brigade in stopping them from being able to play. Lastly, Umi, I think that this deck, oh man, I'm gonna put it in the next budget. Umi players would probably kill me if I put it anything lower. But listen here, Umi is ridiculously good because you can protect your cards like Dimensional Fissure, which your C stealth attack, but even more importantly, this deck actually summons some ridiculously powerful monsters. It can just beat your opponent's face into death, doesn't play any light or dark monsters, so good luck using the Bestials. I think that it does struggle a little bit against Tier Limit going second, but maybe it was just my build and Umi players have a lot more insight. And that's pretty much all that I have for the budget tier list. I want you guys to let me know if you think that I goofy goobird on some of these particular cards on a tier list or strategies on the particular tier list, and let me know. Of course, if you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out these videos, but be sure to check out Master Duel Cali and Casual Cali so you can stay strong.